All right, I can see the level on this is probably going to be low. I'm going to have to boost this in post. Maybe you turn it up. All right, so I got to set all the way. Of course, there's always some airplane coming through. All right, well, I'll put all the settings that I have for the camera at the moment. A little great. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there's some things we do not know. I had recently purchased the Atomos Ninja Ultra. It's a little like 5-inch monitor. One of the settings that I was most interested on this particular monitor was there's what they call like the LV zone. It's a sort of modified version of Ansel Adams' zone system, but it's like taking the zone system but mirroring it with a false color type of system where colors move through a spectrum that translates directly to f-stops instead of IRE values. IRE values, I don't know, I'll put a little thing down here, but essentially IRE values, I think it has something to do with like radio engineers. And so, you know, naturally as photographers, cinematographers, videographers, you know, we're thinking in f-stops or t-stops, but stops of light. So you go from 2 to 2.8. When you stop down from to 2.8 from 2, you're having the amount of light. Likewise, when you go from 2.8 and you open up to T2 or F2, then you are letting in twice the amount of light. So when it comes to like lighting ratios, and I'm still old school, I like to use my Sekonic light meter. It just helps me think more intuitively and quickly because I guess, you know, I started off in the world of photography, black and white, shooting, you know, 35 millimeter, then eventually medium format, and then eventually large format. And so my spot meter really became kind of like my best friend. And so I like to be able to think in terms of f-stops or t-stops in terms of lighting ratios. And I know that like when false color came out, it was all the rage because it kind of gave you a window into, oh, okay, well, you know, these shadows, they look like they're being underexposed or crushed, or my highlights are blowing out. The problem was there was no real standard to move between not only camera to camera, but especially I think in the world of video and cinema photography, we tend to use a lot of external monitors. So you go from one monitor to another monitor, there's no real standard. And so that all kind of goes out the window. So there is a cinematographer, I'll put his name down, who developed this system. And then of course he patented it. And there's been a few manufacturers that have included this. I'm sure there's like some licensing thing. Atomos and Small HD are two that I know of that have adopted this. I don't know of anybody yet that is doing this like in camera, but it's nice to have the external monitor because, you know, I'm in my 50s now, so my eyesight isn't quite as tack sharp as it used to be. So looking at like a little monitor when it comes to, you know, not only checking exposure, but, you know, checking focus, it's nice to have an external monitor. I know they'll say, oh, it's nice to show the client. Well, I'm not really worried about the client. I want to make sure that I can see what's going on first, and then, you know, the client second. So I picked this up after watching a few reviews, and this really shows, I don't know, maybe I'm going to indict myself here in a minute because this is going to be up on YouTube. But I watched a number of YouTube reviews, and it was kind of a toss-up between the Small HD and this for that particular feature. And I decided to go with the Atomos. When I took it out of the box, I bought it here locally in Anaheim from Mojo Cameras. Really nice people. Called them on the phone today. The tech was like, "Yeah, bring it in. We'll take a look at it. If it isn't what you like, you can return it and we'll, swap it out, get you something else." So really nice people. Shout out to the folks at Mojo in Anaheim. So I open up open it up, hook it up, get it going. And as soon as I turn it on, boom, it comes with this, only what I can call like a kind of black screen of death. And the black screen of death was like, hey, you need to update the firmware on this device. I'm like, okay. So I'm looking around and I'm like, wow, what a ingenious bit of engineering. There's no USB port on this. So some of the other nice features of the monitor is that you can upload LUTs to it and do all that kind of stuff. But then also you can, update the firmware on it. The only connection that this takes is through SATA. So you have these little, it's a SATA drive, or you use a SATA drive, not a USB-C, but you have to use a SATA drive. And the cheapest SATA drive that you would actually be able to record to video on is probably going to run you like maybe, I don't know, about $300. And that's for like probably like a 1 terabyte drive. Anything really usable, because once again, by the time you start recording to some of these really higher resolution, higher codec files, the files are going to be massive. So a 1 terabyte drive is not going to cut it. So you're looking at maybe 2 or 4. So you're going to have to spend almost as much money on the monitor itself on this hard drive. So I went and looked at Best Buy. I found a cheap SATA drive for about $100. But then I started thinking, like, am I going to go buy a $100 SATA drive to hook up to my monitor just to install the firmware? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So I think what's going to happen is I'm going to take this back, and I'm actually going to look at perhaps considering the Blackmagic Video Assist. I'm also just considering buying the Pixis as well. So I don't know, we'll see. But I would, and that way I could use the S1 Mark II here and shoot. I could use that as a B cam and use the Pixis as an A cam. And they, both shooting in B-RAW should have a very nice workflow. But I just, the conspiratorial part of me is like, why did Atomos do this? That you have to buy then something else to make the product actually usable. And it's also fairly expensive. It's competing with the price of the unit itself. It just didn't seem to be a good move. Now, I don't think that they manufacture hard drives, so I don't see them getting any win out of that. But I mean, given the virtual universal adoption of USB-C, why not have a USB-C input on this? Or, I don't know, find some way, and come on, you guys are engineers, find a way to finagle a HDMI port that can do this, that allow you at least just like, how do I upload my LUTs? How do I upload and update my firmware without having to go and get a SATA drive? It just was very disappointing. So I'll update you. I'm planning to go out there Monday, and we'll see what we get.